Welcome back. Ever since a human first lifted her eyes to the sky, we have reached for the stars. And for a while there, they almost seemed to be within our grasp. But now financial restraints are threatening publicly funded space programs, making the final frontier a domain of the super rich, as space tourism into low Earth orbits will soon be a reality. But private enterprise is hardly equipped to take over space exploration entirely. Just the Apollo space program cost, if adjusted for inflation, $151 billion. With so many challenges to deal with Earthside, perhaps we should not be spending those kinds of resources chasing a dream. Yet space exploration proponents like Professor Stephen Hawking argue that leaving Earth may become a necessity for the human race to survive at all. Also at stake is the question of how we view ourselves as a species. Climbing mountains and unlocking fundamental mysteries is, after all, what we do. Joining me for the final part of tonight's crosstalks on the topic, what is the future of mankind in the universe, are Göran Östlin, Professor of Astronomy at Stockholm University. Welcome.
Thank you.
Åsa Wikforss, Professor in Theoretical Philosophy, Stockholm University. Welcome. Carl-Mikael Zetterling, Professor in Solid-State Electronics at KTH. Welcome.
Thank you.
And joining us on Skype are Genoveva Micheva, Doctor of Astronomy, currently at Stockholm University. Welcome. Jennifer Gustetic, who is the Prizes and Challenges Program Executive in the Office of the Chief Technologist at NASA. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. And William Pomerantz, VP of Special Projects for Virgin Galactic. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. A warm welcome to the six of you. I'll see if we have Genoveva online. Do we?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Great, thank you. Now we can see all three of you. As a reminder, you do have a unique opportunity during this show to ask questions of all of our guests in the studio, as well as those taking part via Skype. Just call us on Skype through your own account. Our Skype name is Crosstalks TV, and we will do our very best to patch you through. Let's start in the room. Göran, why did you decide to focus on astronomy as your field of research?
Well, I think as you said, it's when you look up at the stars, you start immediately to wonder what our place are in the universe, and what is the sort of limit of human understanding, and so these kind of questions came to my mind, and then I went to university, and I found that it really caught on to me. So and as I went on studying, I developed a deeper and deeper interest in the vastness of space and the limits of our understanding, and how we could actually know anything about the universe. And well, that's the way it started.
I guess you could have become a philosopher as well. It's a similar drive. Also, how do you think our understanding of the universe affects humanity's view of itself?
Well, I mean, scientific new theories will always affect the conceptions that we have of ourselves. And that's why science has seemed so threatening at times in human history, as when they realized that Earth wasn't at the center of the universe anymore and so on. Definitely that there will be... We still have the conception, I think, that, well, we may not be at the center of the universe, but we sort of kind of well-positioned, and it's not that big. But of course, now we're finding out we're just a little speck in a very tiny, corner of this immense, vast universe, and it may affect our conception of ourselves as, some cosmologists say, it makes us less significant.
Mm. But I mean, as a human, I think we're not very good at feeling that we're not significant. I think even individually we think of the most important.
And I actually think significance is a tricky concept. I mean, it's not clear that we would be more significant if we were at the center of the universe, right? I mean, significance has a moral tone to it also. And I mean, one way to look at it is that what's significant about us is that we have consciousness and that we have the capacity to experience pain and pleasure. Mm. And then we are significant no matter how vast the universe is. Then it depends on how many other conscious creatures are out there, how significant we are. If we're the only ones in the universe that have consciousness, then we're super significant in that sense.
Ooh, I'd be really interested to know what everybody else thinks about the odds that we are alone or not. But let's just introduce who's here. Carl-Mikael, your research area is silicon carbide. Can you explain how that research can help us in exploring other planets?
Well, I've been working on this semiconductor material for about 20 years now, and recently I realized that now that we can make electronics that work at 500 degrees centigrade, it opens the possibilities to explore some new worlds, like Venus, for instance, which is extremely hot. And that could tell us, for instance, is there or has there been life on Venus? I mean, this is a philosophical question too, I think.
Immediately
Really
again, as my layman's reaction to this is, but if it's 500 degrees centigrade, certainly there can't have been. But well, I'm very curious to hear the answers to that as well. When you go to work in the morning, Carl-Mikael, do you think about your contribution to space exploration, or is it more sort of just about the excitement of figuring out the daily problem?
No, I don't think about Venus daily, but I do think about doing research that could be of importance and have some applications in different areas. So my knowledge about space research could jokingly be said to come from reading science fiction books.
Does it target your research? Like, do you find goals from science fiction for where you want your research to go?
Sometimes, but most of it is really finding the limits of what we can do with the materials we're doing and proving that it can be done. I'm an experimentalist, so I really want to show things, not just simulate it in the computer.
Fantastic. Jennifer, what would you say are the biggest challenges that NASA is currently working on as you continue the exploration of space?
Well, I'd say that NASA is, in its very nature, an agency of challenges. we since the beginning of our history and our inception, have been tackling some of the greatest scientific and technological challenges of our day and been helping to drive some of the thinking of that into the future and not just making it thinking, but reality. I think that some of the things that we're working on now that are the most exciting, that I particularly work on, are some of our efforts to really expand our activities in partnership and open innovation with others to help to achieve these great quests together. I personally come from a history I studied aerospace engineering back in the day in undergrad, but I focused most of my career on public-private partnerships and thinking about how the public sector and the private sector can actually work better together, and not just traditional organizations, but also individuals, citizen inventors, citizen scientists, individuals that aren't traditionally thought to work with academia or industry or government in solving tough problems. So for me, some of the really exciting things that I think NASA is doing today, and there's tons of examples that we can get to over the course of the discussion today, are some of those partnerships that we're pushing with commercial space companies, some of the efforts that we're doing through prizes and challenges, and trying to engage the world really in the challenges of space exploration, aeronautics, and science.
I think we have to have at least one example now. If somebody's watching this, I guess we should have two. If a general member of the audience is watching this broadcast and would want to get involved, what could they do? And then I have the same question about if you're a postgraduate today or a graduate student, and you would want to work in this field, what would be the most exciting direction to go?
So the good news is there's a ton of opportunity right now, and it's coming quite frequently. So we have a recent push within the last year or two at NASA to be using more and more prizes and challenges to solve tough problems that we have here at NASA. So a great example of one that is currently live. Currently today, you can log on to the NASA Tournament Lab. It's a platform hosted by the Top Coder platform. So it's primarily folks that are in the development fields, software development fields, algorithm, data science, kind of those areas. There's a challenge up right now that's looking at other ways for using Earth science data and Earth science models in order to discover things about our Earth. And so that one will be open until early June. The prizes that we run on the Top Coder platform, our NASA Tournament Lab, tend to be really quick tournament style. It's competition where every day the leaderboard changes. So it's really, really fun competition for experts in the area of data science and development and software, where they can actually use their skills and apply them to space problems, and they get paid at the end of the day. So if you end up winning a first, second, or third place placer in the tournaments, you get paid on that particular platform, as well as other platforms that we have live currently. Another example is the NASA Innovation Pavilion, which is based on the Innocentive platform, another open innovation platform that you guys might be be familiar with. We recently just wrapped up a couple of challenges on there, and more will be coming this year. So just keep your eyes out for more opportunities on the incentive platform. But those tend to be prizes that are more in the area of new designs or ideas or concepts or methods. We had a challenge out earlier this year that was looking for a better way to measure strain on Kevlar and Vectran straps in our labs. It was a strain testing technique that we needed some better ideas for, and the winners split a prize purse of $20,000. So there's quite a few opportunities for individuals that have never really had an opportunity to work with NASA before, let alone respond to a formal request for a proposal or a contracting opportunity, to work directly with us in solving really interesting problems through some of these open innovation platforms.
Well, that is super exciting. So, William, you're at Virgin Galactic. Could you tell us about where you guys currently are with the suborbital space flight project?
Sure. So we're in the test flight program of Spaceship Two, our suborbital human-capable spaceship. It's actually sort of pictured on the wall behind me here, so you can get a little bit of a glimpse of it there. This is based on some prototype hardware, a vehicle called Spaceship One that actually won an incentive prize like the ones Jen was just speaking about back in 2004. We commercialized that technology and are developing it now for routine passenger flight, whether that is people who are just going to space for fun or people who are going to space in order to conduct research or humanitarian efforts, etc. We just had a major milestone a month and a day ago when for the first time we had a full integrated test of the system. So taking the rocket motor, which we've tested many times on the ground, and combining it with the spaceship and the mothership, which we've tested many times in the air, and having our first supersonic flight, which is really an exciting day for us and a major milestone. We've got a fair amount of testing yet to do. As you can imagine, with a vehicle like this, we really want to be very confident that the experience we're offering to our customers is both a safe one and an enjoyable one. But we're looking forward to beginning our routine flights to space sometime around the end of this calendar year, and having commercial customers in the back of the vehicle by sometime early next year.
That is very soon, but that is fantastic. I do have to ask, did I hear you say that one of the uses could be humanitarian efforts?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we have people who want to go to space for all kinds of reasons. One thing that I found when you work in an industry like space exploration is that people who you meet, you know, just on the street, people you speak to, ask this question of why go to space, which is a reasonable question, but I don't think it has a single answer. It's sort of like asking the question, why go to Sweden? Everyone you ask probably has a different answer. Some people are going for the university, some people are going for industry, some people are going for friends, some people are going for tourism. And I think space is much the same. And in fact, space, you know, being essentially infinite, is the same idea applied to an even larger scope.
I notice you're dodging the question, though.
No, absolutely. Sorry, I don't mean to. People absolutely can go for humanitarian needs. Everything from, an example just from this week was we had several seats on our vehicle that were auctioned off with the benefits going to a charity that was in cooperation with the actor Leonardo DiCaprio, who's going to fly, and people paid quite a fair sum of money in order to fly to space sitting next to him. But also people who are looking at the research that you can conduct with these vehicles. You know, the magic of these vehicles is that they are going to fly routinely, and they're going to fly, by space terms at least, incredibly affordably. So all of the wonderful people from academia, from government labs who have been doing great work in their facilities already, work that applies to everything from climate change to material science to you know, a million different fields. Now we'll just have a new opportunity to do those experiments again more frequently. That's something that excites me. I actually come from a science background originally, and the reason I'm not a professional scientist anymore is I got frustrated by how in the space industry, you know, you're lucky if you get to do an experiment every 10 years. And that is something that I think is very stifling to students, to young professionals, to people of all ages and backgrounds. When you have the opportunity for maybe a first-year master's student in a graduate school in Sweden to design an experiment and have it fly in space by the end of that first year of school, I think that you'll have people who dream up much more imaginative experiments because they're able to take those risks.
For sure. Our last guest, Genoveva, you're a doctor of astronomy, as we said, but you have also applied to a position as an ESA astronaut and made it through a couple of the first steps. Can you tell us about this experience?
Okay, so it actually goes down the line secret movie.
I'm sorry, we're having a bad line. Can you just speak a little slower? Thank you. Let's see if it helps.
I won't speak slower yet. So I actually have to stay on this agreement. I know it's real.
I'm really sorry, Genoveva. We're going to have to make some sound testing and see if we can bring you back in a little bit later in the conversation. Darn, I'm so sorry. We'll get back to you. Göran, your research is about galaxies, both in time and distance. This involves operating on pretty inhuman scales, right? So what are some of the interfaces that enable us to observe space in that way? Because if you go up on William's spaceship, that's not going to help very much, is it?
Well, it is important. I mean, you can observe the universe from ground, but lots of the things we actually know about the universe, we've learned through actually going out into space. And then I'm not only talking about space exploration as such, as going to the moon or sending a probe to a different planet, but actually they're very important tools for astronomers are orbiting observatories like the Hubble Space Telescope and other major observatories that have been pivotal in actually shaping our current view of the universe and have led to many of the greatest discoveries. So without access to space, astronomy would not be where it is today, and we would not know nearly as much about the universe.
Do you guys need to send humans out? Would it make a difference?
Not really. I mean, in a sense, I mean, for instance, the Hubble Space Telescope, which is arguably the most successful observatory in history of astronomy, has been serviced many times by astronauts. These are not astronomers as such, but these are skilled astronauts that can change the instruments and repair broken parts and so on. Of course, you can imagine having an astronomer on site in a spaceship or in a satellite, but the way I view it now, it's not there is no immediate need for an astronomer to be there, but there is certainly a case for having people in space helping out with astronomical observations.
Well, then the next question is to all of you. During one of the previous Crosstalks broadcasts, we talked about the destiny of man and robot. As robots are becoming increasingly more developed and even potentially self-aware, does it make sense to send humans into space at all? Who would like to start? No?
I can start. Yeah,
okay,
I think it absolutely does continue to make sense. The things that we do will change and evolve as robotics advance, and certainly robots have some unique attributes that humans do not have, and we are going to continue to take advantage of those, sending those to places where humans are not able or willing to go, or where it's simply too expensive to send them. But we learn so much by sending humans to space, both about the space environment and about ourselves. I think there's a great amount of medical research and physiological research that we can do by studying the way that humans behave in a zero-gravity environment or in these other kinds of environments that are just extremely difficult, if not impossible, to study here on Earth. And on top of that, I think there's a variety of social, artistic, other kind of goals that can uniquely be accomplished by humans and not by robots.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Yes, I mean, I guess it depends on the task. Surely there are scenarios where it would be a much better idea to send a robot. I'm sure that's true. But of course, if we're interested in, like you were suggesting also, larger cultural issues, then the robots we have today are not that interesting culturally. So then you want to send out a human being who will reflect on what this means for us and values and whatever. So of course, but why take huge risk with human beings in situations where you can use robots? That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
Oh, but the humans want to take the risks.
Well, they might, and they do, I imagine. But even then, you can wonder whether it's right to send them out.
Well, that's interesting. It could be ethically questionable to want to become an astronaut. All of us who want to, by the way,
it's
are
ethically
now,
questionable to kill yourself. So it's a question of it's a question of, you know, I mean, if it's a very, very dangerous situation, is it justified by you just wanting to get a kick out of this? But of course, if there's some larger, very important goal having to do with the development of medical science and so on, it might be justified. But you would have to look at the details of the situation.
That is a firebrand. We're going to return to that. Carl-Mikael, what do you think?
Well, I think there are more and more areas where we can send better robots or mechanical devices that can do the research in place of humans, and this is what we should do. And this way we can save our resources and our astronauts for the places where it's really needs the adaptability of a human to take in really new environments. I mean, a lot of the work of NASA in planning the landers on Mars or on Venus is on things that, what if you land on a stone, what do you do? Well, a human would step aside, but to program a robot to take that into account takes lots and lots of work. So some things are really simple for a human, and some things are a lot better suited for a robot that can go around and probe rocks forever and ever without taking a pause. An astronaut would be bored in seconds, right?
But there's still, we're skirting around it a little bit, but there is something, I guess we could call it the because it's there argument, that people will want to travel into space just to see if they can. I don't know, what's the NASA view on this, Jennifer?
So I'd say there's many reasons that we explore. One of the very basic reasons that we explore is because of who we are as humans, as Will was talking about earlier. We don't just travel for the fun of it. You can look at our ancestors that traveled across the Atlantic to the New World for resources and for a better life. And so there's a variety of reasons why we explore. You can say that we explore to survive, that we explore for growth, and we explore to prosper. So there's a variety of different reasons why, as humans, we make the choice to constantly be expanding the boundaries of what's potential, what our potential is for the human species. And NASA has invested in both. We have significant investments in robotic exploration. We have spacecraft around Mercury, Mars, Saturn, and of course Earth and our moon. And we have them on the way to Jupiter and Pluto, as well as our studies of the sun and distant stars. So we're heavily invested in robotic exploration. And you may have heard something called the Curiosity Rover. That's also on the surface of Mars right now, that's doing great work, a robotic rover on the surface of Mars, doing great work in helping us to uncover some of the scientific secrets of that great world. But yet we have had a continuous presence on the human presence on the International Space Station for the last 12 years, and currently have 6 people that are up there right now. And what's really important here to note is that what Spirit and Opportunity did in 5.5 years on Mars. So those were rovers that we had there a few years before this. We could have all done in a week with a human. So it takes a lot less time to actually achieve the scientific objective while you're on the surface of Mars with a person than it does with a robot. But you balance all of these different pros and cons when you're making the choice about whether it's a human mission or a robotic mission. And in fact, we have robots on ISS right now helping us live and work there. So we have Robonaut, which is a really exciting example of a partnership between us and industry in getting a human-like robot that's up there helping us to live and work in space and teaching us more and more about that human-robotic interface in that environment. So there's just a ton of exciting stuff going on there. And NASA invests very strongly in both areas because we believe that both are very, very important to the future of exploration.
I think before I move on to the next question, I should ask a control question. William, do you guys at Virgin Galactic consider yourself to be competitors or collaborators of NASA? Hello, William?
Oh, I'm back now. You lost me for a second.
Yes, my question was, are you at Virgin Galactic considering yourself to be competitors or collaborators to NASA?
Oh, we're absolutely collaborators. We could not do the things that we do if we weren't able to borrow from the lessons that NASA and other space agencies have taught us. So we absolutely consider ourselves admirers of NASA and collaborators with NASA. And in fact, now we have a different relationship, which is that NASA is a customer of ours. NASA has already chartered a full flight and are holding options to charter additional flights of Spaceship Two to use it as a research vessel. They will fly it instead of with 6 passengers in the back, we'll fill it up with sort of 6 passengers worth of research equipment. So we definitely have a very fruitful relationship with the agency.
So what would happen to the science community's interest in Mars, for instance, or humanity's interest in Mars, indeed, if a private company lands a manned flight on Mars and claims it? What happens then?
Well, I don't know that would happen. I mean, there is a fairly complex body of law and regulation regarding the claiming of any outer space body. I think there are certainly cases to be made for private companies going to the moon, going to Mars, and extracting resources and claiming those resources in much the same way that companies can do that from the ocean floor here on Earth, despite that being the property of all humankind. But I think in general, the scientists that I talk to in the community, and it just so happens that my wife works for NASA on the Mars program, would be thrilled to have someone walking around on the surface who could be calling back home and telling us what they're seeing there.
In that case, let's see. Genoveva, hello, welcome back.
Yes, thank you.
It's good to have you. So we were talking about your application to become an ESA astronaut, and you've made it through some of the first steps. Could you tell us about that experience?
Right, but as I tried to explain before, I actually had to sign a non-disclosure agreement, so I can't really give you details of the tests.
Okay.
But I can say that it was very serious, it was very organized, and I would gladly do it again.
What does it? Is it an elimination process? So you're out now. Yeah.
It is an elimination process. I like to tell people that I failed the psychological test, which I didn't do, but I like to tell them that it makes people nervous. So.
Why would you like to become an astronaut?
Well, to me personally, that's a really strange question because it essentially boils down to why would you want to go into space? And I can give you a metaphor as an explanation. Imagine that you go on a holiday to some really exotic place and you spend the entire holiday locked up in your hotel room. Who would do that? Nobody would do that. That's not us as a species, right? I mean, there's a strong case to be made for staying in your hotel room. You have water, you have a bathroom, you have a bed, you have TV, you have air conditioning, room service, everything you need. You don't need to go outside. But, you know, the question is not why would you stay in your hotel room? The question is, or rather, the question is, why would you stay in your hotel room? The question is, why wouldn't you go outside? Who wouldn't go outside? So,
well, part of it.
I can't. Yeah.
Part of it we were talking about before, I don't know if you heard us, was about the risk. For instance, if I'm assuming that the first manned missions to Mars are very likely to be one way, and certainly when we're talking about going further into space, you're probably not going to return. Then suddenly the hotel room starts to look pretty enticing for some of us.
Really? Doesn't it seem like a prison? I mean, I don't want to be morbid, but does it matter where you're going to die? It's not like it will change anything.
Fair enough. So it becomes about, I don't know, how do we approach this also? About the value of life or about the good life?
I mean, I think that's absolutely a fair step. It's a question of what you value in life. And I mean, I have absolutely zero desire to go out in space, but I can certainly understand people who have that desire and find it, fascinating or whatever. The sort of then, I mean, that's a question of personal motivation. Why do I do this? What drives me to do this? Of course, then the moral question is distinct from that. Of course, whether it's right to let a person do what they really want to do. That's a separate question. But I can, people have been, like everybody been saying, people have always been trying to explore the final frontier now, right? So that's in human nature, and I certainly. Yeah.
It's always been a dangerous game.
It's always been a dangerous game, and people have done lots of really stupid things. But of course, as a result, knowledge has expanded tremendously, and that has had good effects. You never know when a really stupid thing will have extremely good effects long term for human society. So that's very hard to predict. So the moral case is a tricky one, I think. But that humans will always do this.
I'm going to introduce another big topic now. I mentioned it at the beginning. Professor Stephen Hawking and many other people have argued that we will ultimately need to leave the planet. I think in the context of all of the conversations that we've had on Crosstalks through the different programs, I think we're all pretty motivated to save the planet. But at the same time, it's clear that the process, when we're looking at space exploration, the kind of science that we're developing, one of the goals will be to be able to travel in large numbers and farther away. And because of that's how we're wired, we're going to want to colonize space. So I'd like to ask each of you, from each of your perspective, how do we start? What is the most important thing or the most interesting thing about space colonization for you? Who would like to begin? Carl-Mikael?
I'm sure people will explore the idea of space colonization, but at present I think they're underestimating the cost and extreme amounts of energy and resources needed to colonize something, make it large enough that anyone would like to live there for long enough. I mean, it's like building a hotel room on Mars and you would have to sit in there instead. You would have to build something really large and send enough people. There have been many experiments on Earth where you shut people in a small building and they see how they get along. One is called Big Brother. It's an experiment in that, and we know how that usually goes. But I would disagree with Stephen Hawking and saying, I think it's a bad idea to think of space colonization as a plan B, because it will tend to make us not as careful about our resource, which is the planet Earth.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, there's a horrible next question, right? Who gets to go? And who selects and on what grounds? We are, 6 billion people, maybe a fraction will be able to go, and that's just, I mean, to think of that as a solution to the problems of mankind is extraordinarily strange, I think. And just for the purpose of what? Just for the purpose of making some part of our genes continue to live somewhere else. Of course, what develops them will be a new race, most likely, because it will be a very, very small group of people. So I don't know. No.
Yeah.
Well, we better save the planet, because even if we one day could go to another planet, that's far in the future. And I mean, we know that one day Earth will be inhabitable because of the evolution of the sun, for instance. So, but I mean, going to a different solar system, it's a very long trip, and I think it is very. I mean, it's several light years. It takes several years for light to travel there. I mean, we all have heard this, but it's very difficult to actually imagine how far it really is and how much resources it would take. And as also said, it will be a small fraction, a tiny fraction of humanity that we could have the energy to actually lift up into space. So we better save the planet, because these are fantastic dreams, and one day I think mankind might go into space and colonize it, but that's very far in the future. And we can do that on large scales.
The physicists and the astronomers say that basically us lay people who are dreaming about this, we don't understand the distances. This part of it is a problem of communicating the scale. But Genoveva, you are an astronomer, and you're still on Team Space. So how do you look at space colonization?
I look at it, I absolutely agree that yes, we have only one planet that we know of that can support us, and not only us, but the other species that live with us. But exactly because of that, we have to stop mining it and instead go and mine Mars. Mars is dead. There are a bunch of asteroids floating around in space being absolutely useless, but full of resources. They belong to no one. We should go take them, right? We are the only ones in the solar system. Why should we mine in our own home? Why should we drag out whatever metals, gases from our soil? We can go do it on Mars or on anywhere else in the solar system. That's my view.
That's actually really interesting. That's a case that I'm not sure I've even heard before. So it's not very widely covered. Carl-Mikael.
Short comment: you won't find any fossil fuels on Mars.
No.
Which is the scarcest resource.
So, okay, right. Yeah. So fossil fuel still needs to be solved. Also, perhaps to go to Mars, we need a better power source. It is a little complicated, I agree. Okay, how about William and Jennifer? Where are you on space colonization? William.
Well, I think it's definitely something that needs to happen. I think it's still many, many generations away, but I think it's incredibly exciting that we live in a time where we can even begin to think seriously about it. And you can have a private company that was set up to do asteroid mining, just as we were just discussing, that is backed by technically credible people and substantial amounts of wealth, as well as crowdfunding and citizen science, as we've just seen in the past day or so. I think it's wonderful that we're thinking about that now. That does not by any means mean that we can stop considering our home planet. But actually, as we've learned, going to space teaches us so much more about our home planet. I think you can very plausibly trace the environmental movement to the space exploration movement, to seeing those photographs of the whole Earth that the Apollo astronauts took, and of course to the huge volumes of data that are sent back by the European Space Agency and by NASA and by others, teaching us about our home planet.
Mm. How about you, Jennifer? Where is it?
So I'm hearing primarily two kind of threads of discussion around this topic. One is, how do we expand sustainably into the solar system, and the other as humans? And the other is, well, how do we even protect what we have here on Earth? And I will say that NASA has investments in both of those areas. In expanding our presence into the solar system, like I said before, we have the International Space Station, which is our foothold in space that we've had a continued human presence on for 12 years, using commercial companies to resupply that and someday be delivering astronauts from US soil to the International Space Station. That's all freeing up NASA to be able to focus on taking humans further than we've ever gone before, using our space launch system, our new rocket, as well as our Orion capsule, which is our new crewed capsule for exploration. And as you may have seen in the President's FY14 budget that was released just a few months ago, that NASA is planning a strategy for a broader focus on asteroids in the coming years. A kind of two-pronged approach. One prong is planning for the first ever mission to go and rendezvous with, capture, and redirect an asteroid to the vicinity just beyond the moon to send a crewed mission to in the 2020s per the direction of the President in April 2010. That will take us further than we've ever gone before into space, into the solar system, but it's also expanding the economic sphere of influence of the US or of the globe, which is one of the things that's a very important point in how we sustainably expand. It's not just about how far we can go technically, it's also about how far the economic presence and how far that economic sphere and that support system also expands out to support that work across the solar system, which is why our partners on the commercial side are so important for making the business case for these types of activities and this growth moving forward. But taking it back to ultimately protecting our own planet and keeping our planet a place that we can thrive and not just survive, it's important to keep in mind that NASA has robust investments in Earth science programs to be thinking about how we're actually understanding and making decisions and decisions about our Earth to help sustain it, but then also how we can protect ourselves from space-based threats. So these asteroids, while they may be sources of resources and potential treasure troves of information about the origin of life and the origin of the solar system, they hit us sometimes.
Is there not?
Like they did in Russia.
Will there not be an asteroid tomorrow?
This year. And so NASA's program, the NEO program, or Near Earth Observation Program, has been trying to find these things for over a decade. And you're seeing an amplified effort by NASA in the last few months and in the coming months and years to try to do even better at understanding where these things are, what they're made of, and being able to characterize them, both for potential utilization by commercial space companies in the future and potentially to know how to do something about them if they're headed towards us.
Jennifer,
there's still a bunch of these things that we need to find.
Okay, Jennifer, is there not an asteroid heading towards us right now? Or it's going to pass very close tomorrow, but very briefly. It's not a threat, right?
There is an asteroid passing by. Actually, it's at its closest approach today and tomorrow. So you're following the news. It's an asteroid called QE2, and it is rather large, but it is very, very far away. It's close enough that an amateur astronomer could see it through their telescope. It's a very, very bright asteroid. So for those of you that are amateur astronomers or like to find NEOs, you can actually look up information on the JPL website and the Minor Planet Center website to find out where this thing is and see it for yourself. It's an exciting opportunity. These bright ones don't come by all that often. But this is also an opportunity for NASA to put radar on this thing for the first time, to really get detailed views of what its shape is, what its rotation rate is, what it's made of, so that we can understand better this class of asteroids that are big. This asteroid is of the size that did some damage to the dinosaurs a while ago. So it is one that's pretty large, but it's far enough, it's very far away that it's not any threat towards us as a planet, but we can learn a lot from it by observing it these next couple days.
All right, that is fascinating. I think I would really like to bring in some questions from the room and from the internet if we have any Skype questions in line. Do we have running to the microphone? That's a good sign. Yes. Please state your name and affiliation and your question, please. Welcome.
Okay. Hi. My name is Charles Motamedi. I'm from the company Energy 46 and the business section here in Stockholm University. I have a two-part question.
All right.
One is about, you mentioned fossil fuels, how astronomy can help us solve the energy crisis here in Sweden, and also about knowledge expanding. Previously, we've had nations or states competing in the space race, basically, but now it's kind of the same but a different platform in the privatized section with a lot of proprietary laws involved. So how is this a hindrance, and what is the solution?
Yeah, let's do fossil fuels first. The way I understood it is that astronomy can't help us, that we have to solve that first. Who heard it correctly? Carl-Mikael.
Well, we would have to find life first to find fossil fuels.
Okay,
I mean,
so
fossil fuels are a result of previous life.
Yes, but the problem is the fossil fuels. That
Right.
should not be looked at as a solution. So
No.
I'm asking more if astronomy can help us find a different solution, a different viewpoint.
I think
Göran,
we'll have
we
to
are
ask
looking
the
at you.
astronomer for that.
Well, a solution to the energy problem, or
yeah, can't we put a
Well, I
star
mean,
in a
we-
box or something?
no, I mean we have the sun, which is powered by fusion, and of course one of the great challenges in the next few decades is to get the fusion power to work on Earth. But that's not really a science which is driven by astronomers today, although it was first sort of discovered in space. But this is a technological endeavor, of course.
Can I ask a really stupid question relating to this? So solar power, again, because of the distance, is not very useful in space, or super useful in space.
It's well, I mean, the efficiency goes down, of course, the further you get from the sun. So, but I mean, many of the satellites and so on are of course powered by solar energy. So it is a very important energy resource in space.
Then let's take the second part of the question. So this that has to do with the space race moving into a sort of global venture. I'm open to reflections on this from all of you.
Well,
Yeah.
one comment I would like to make on that is that the more ambitious the space exploration plans get, and also scientific plans get, the more expensive they tend to get. So this also brings in the need for collaboration. So for instance, within Europe, there is the ESA, the European Space Agency, who is I mean, a collaboration between European states. So that limits the competition within Europe, of course. And now the most ambitious science projects cannot even be done by ESA or NASA alone, but scientific collaboration and technological collaboration is a need to be able to do the most ambitious missions. So I think that is one way of looking upon it.
But what would be the business model if we're thinking about involving private capital in this massive? I mean, is it a kind of sponsorship model we're looking at, or could we imagine a future where you have huge, let's say, space mining companies, and that those would be driving research in all space-related fields? Do you guys think we're moving in that direction because the states just don't have the money? Where are you on this? Anyone?
Well, I think, yes, we've started to move in that direction where for the first time we have entrepreneurs who are investing their own money in space research. And, I alluded earlier to a company called Planetary Resources, one of our customers at Virgin Galactic for our small satellite launch vehicle. And they just announced a crowdfunding campaign yesterday. They've already raised $400,000 US in the last 24 hours from people who want to support a new space-based telescope. It's a funding source that NASA is not really able to look for, and ESA and other space agencies as well. When you add that on top of the venture capital that's already started to flow into the community, and then some of the big industrial institutions that are starting to invest their own money rather than just passing that bill on to a taxpayer, I think it gives us hope for a future where it's not just a monopsony anymore. There are multiple customers and multiple funding sources.
All right. Do we have another question from the audience?
Can I just add, I didn't feel that my answer or my question was answered really.
Okay, let's
specifically
rephrase.
about proprietary and, let's say, space technologies being, in a sense, not spread. That knowledge is kept in, let's say, China with their cosmonauts. They have their technology. In America, they have theirs. In Europe, we have the technology here. But there's no synergy effects. It's basically still a race. So
okay, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah,
so
the
we
cooperation model. When is that?
So we're looking at some crowdfunding things happening, but okay. Well, the question is actually the space race is still there. Then is that the case? I don't know. Jennifer.
I would say that we at NASA have extensive international partnerships. So where there are efforts that each space agency takes to try to support their domestic technology base and industry base, and to try to stimulate small businesses and try to stimulate industry within their own countries, there's significant collaboration that we have with partners at ESA and JAXA and a variety of other space agencies across the world. So I would say that we very much prioritize collaboration, and not just with our international partners, but with our commercial partners. You've seen innovative new instruments that have evolved that aren't your traditional contract for how we work with some of the private sector entities that we have started the commercial crew resupply program with, as well as the commercial crew program. These funded space act agreements that are a lot more flexible than traditional contracts and are a different way of kind of doing business between government and the private sector. So not only do we have extensive partnerships that require collaboration, so I wouldn't say it's a siloed as the question may make it seem. We're also really experimenting with new methods and new ways to think about partnering even more effectively, because space is expensive, and space is also the destiny of humanity, one could argue, and humanity is all of the world. So it's really all of our job to pitch in together, not just NASA's job, not just ESA's job, to pitch in together and do this.
But the jurisdiction is a complicated question right now, and it's not very simple to say that you can't claim Mars. It would be considered very bad form to land on Mars and claim it for your company, but it's not necessarily illegal as the laws stand now. I wonder about, we have a tendency, for instance, that there's a great interest in patenting genetic information. Let's assume that a mission to an asteroid finds traces of a life form previously unknown and patents that. I mean, this does raise completely new kinds of questions, and you guys do have to think about this at work.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's illegal to set up your own situation on Mars, I mean, what will the sanctions be? I mean, it's also, you can have laws. It's like international law, you know. There are lots of things you can't do that people do all the time, and it's hard to see what the sanctions will be in space. So, I wouldn't trust law to sort of make this work out in a beautiful way.
Carl-Mikael, what do you think?
Well, I think collaboration is necessary for some of these experiments and launches, but I think collaboration is also important. If it wasn't for collaboration, who would get first there or there to land on Moon? Nothing of this would happen, I think. The race is needed. It's part of humanity too, wanting to be first. Otherwise, you wouldn't spend so many dollars.
Collaboration and competition. Then, Genoveva, you were nodding before. What were you thinking?
I was nodding a lot when.
I don't know. Do you have an opinion on the?
Well, actually, I absolutely agree. Yes, collaboration is very important, but competition is what got the Americans to the moon. It wasn't collaboration; it was competition that got them there in just under a decade. So something needs to essentially make us move. motivate us. And it appears to be competition more than collaboration, unfortunately.
All right, we have another question right here. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that talk. My name is Mario Romero. I'm from KTH. And this is a question about the hole that was left by the retirement of the shuttle. And I'm looking for the most concrete answers that you can give within that which you can talk about. What is the future of the astronaut program? So kids today that want to become astronauts, there's sort of this, well, first of all, it's very challenging to get there. But then what is there once you get there? What is the future 10, 20 years down? And as concrete as possible, please.
Thank you. Yes, as concrete as you can for your NDAs. Where are we on astronaut programs? Let's start with NASA. Jennifer.
So actually, just within the last year, we selected our next astronaut class. So we are continuing to recruit astronauts in the U.S., and those astronauts are being trained for a different set of missions. So we have our astronaut corps that is very well versed in how to operate the ISS and do the science and do the research that we do on the ISS and what those missions look like, what those 6-month long or even longer. We're going to have our first extended stay coming up pretty soon as well. But this new class of astronauts is getting trained for a whole host of different things. So these folks could be the people that are actually rendezvousing with an asteroid in the 2020s and coming out of a Orion-like module and interacting with this asteroid. It's a different set of requirements and a different set of tasks that those astronauts will be faced with, a different set of skills, a different environment that they're faced with than when you're on the inside of the ISS and occasionally doing a spacewalk and spending most of your time doing research. And so we are training a new set of astronauts for the missions that we envision for the future, and we'll continue to be recruiting astronauts. The astronaut program is alive and well.
That sounds awesome. William, where are you guys in the private sector on this?
I think it's an incredibly exciting time. You know, from the beginning of history until today, only about 530 people have ever been to space. It's a really small number, and they're all sort of demographically extremely similar. They're about 80% male. They come predominantly from just 2 or 3 countries. They are all in peak physical condition, which means that most of the 7 billion of us on this planet have grown up knowing that we did not have a chance to go to space. I knew from a very young age that no matter how hard I tried, nor no matter how lucky I was, I could never become a NASA astronaut because my vision disqualified me, even though I can wear glasses or other corrective measures that seem to make that a rather nonsensical reason to exclude me and so many others. Now there is the chance that because there are more vehicles that are coming on board that can carry humans, more entities that are coming on board that can carry humans, that I and others like me will have that chance to go. And we'll be able to pick how we want to go. Do we want to go just as a tourist, or do we want to go as a researcher? Do we want to go once, or do we want to go multiple times? Do we want to go on one type of vehicle versus another type of vehicle? I think it's a really exciting opportunity, and hopefully it'll take these social effects that we see of students who are exposed to human spaceflight wanting to try harder in their science, technology, engineering, and mathematics classes. And we make it that much more realistic for them to go. And you also increase the odds that they will have in their lifetime met someone who has gone to space.
Yeah.
I think it's a really exciting time.
Genoveva, if you make it through another run of this test at some point, what do you imagine, what is your imagined answer to this question? What kind of a mission do you think your generation will realistically be doing?
I was actually really hoping for the space mining, but I just heard that it's not realistic within this generation's lifetime. So I can't really imagine why, though, because if we actually make a conscious effort, a dedicated effort, it seems to me like we should get pretty close to something like that.
Mm. So we need to work harder. It's a strong message to all the students and researchers watching.
It wouldn't take much. It would not take much. I don't think it would take much.
You guys are smiling down here. It wouldn't take much. It would take a little bit. Carl-Mikael.
Comment to Will. It sounds like a Hollywood movie, being able for a couple of old men to go and visit an asteroid. I think I've seen that somewhere.
That doesn't necessarily make it weaker. It makes it a stronger dream. Certainly, that would drive private capital into it. I'm just thinking about watching this rendezvous with an I mean, we're not necessarily going to call it television in 10 years' time, because that's moving fast as well, but just being able to see some humans do something like this is pretty awe-inspiring, I think. Åsa?
Well, yeah, I mean, okay, I'm going to be the downer today because that's so, yeah, it's immensely expensive, all this stuff, right? And one can wonder whether we shouldn't just eradicate poverty on Earth instead. I mean, this is so, yeah. One can think about it.
Question a little bit. It is expensive, but here in the United States, you know, taxpayers this year have spent more on gifts for their pets than they'll spend on spaceflight throughout the course of the year. So it's not a zero-sum game in that way.
Well, it is. I mean, they shouldn't spend it on gifts to their pets. They should spend it on things that will.
But if that's a larger sum, maybe the pet needs fewer toys, and we eradicate poverty, and we also go to space.
Sure, that would be fantastic. But I think one should keep that perspective here as well.
We're going to have to finish the program at this controversial point. I think you guys both have a pretty strong argument there, as we all know. I'm going to ask all of you one final question. We already know Genoveva's answer, but you get to answer it again. Let's start with Göran here. Would you travel into space if you could, given the opportunity?
Well,
I would go right now.
Göran?
Yeah, sure. But I mean, it depends, of course, also on the conditions. If it would be a one-way ticket to Mars, I wouldn't go. No, I wouldn't.
No,
but
no.
if I could go up on one of these Virgin Galactic rides, yes, I would be keen.
All right. Åsa, how about you?
Well, no.
No. Why?
It's dark and cold, and you sit in weird situation. You can't move. It doesn't smell anything, I bet. It doesn't have any of the sensual qualities that planet Earth has and makes it so delightful. No, not interested.
Interesting. Good argument there. Carl-Mikael.
No, not if it's a one-way mission. My wife and son would never forgive me. And also a less expensive way of experiencing weightlessness is scuba diving, and I've done that.
That's really interesting. How about you, Jennifer? Would you go into space if given a chance?
I think the easy answer is yes, but the real answer is also it depends. I don't think I'm the one-way mission type either, but certainly I want to have that experience in my lifetime.
I'm realizing, William, we haven't asked you, have you been to space?
I have not yet been to space. I have certainly experienced weightlessness on a thing called parabolic flight, which is how NASA and other agencies train their astronauts. It's a wonderful experience. It's actually substantially different from scuba diving, which I also quite enjoy. But I'm working actively to get myself and my loved ones into space as quickly and as many times as possible.
That's very lovely. Thank you all ever so much. Göran Östlin, Åsa Wikforss, and Carl-Mikael Zetterling here in the room, and on Skype, Jennifer Gustetic, Genoveva Micheva, and William Pomerantz. Thank you. That is all we had time for this evening. Thank you so much for your participation and for watching the program. Crosstalks will be back in September with 3 brand new topics, and until then, be safe and be brave.